Southside Strangler, featuring full name Timothy Wilson Spencer. Crimes and sprees. Timothy Wilson Spencer was known to commit murders towards at least 5 females, along with murdering and executing their lives. Usually, when the murder took place, Timothy was known to break into their homes. In other words, he would do burglary. He would often blindside them, tie them up to prevent them from escaping before sexually assaulting them. After he was satisfied with the assaults, he would execute their lives. Whenever he would go into that phase, he would usually do it with a rope, belt, or some variety of a sock. All victims were known to be females, however, the ages and identities were slightly different. Some of them were in high school, whilst other female victims were in their middle-aged years. Aside from murders, he was involved in non-homicidal crimes, which included breaking into homes, burglary, rapes, and arson. Similar to his murder cases, he would break into homes, then rape whoever lived inside the flat he broke into, which apparently was all females that lived there, which likely meant he targeted females. Anyways, overall, the crimes of Timothy Wilson Spencer involved sexual rapes and violent break-ins. Investigation. The investigation into the case of Timothy Wilson Spencer was a high-panic manhunt that involved heavily relying on forensics high-tech. Tragically, another man named David Vasquez was accused and involved in the case, and was even sentenced for the crimes he did not commit. The investigation would take place in the fall of 1987 in Richmond and Arlington, Virginia. It was a difficult time for the police to figure out due to the fact they could not discover any proper evidence. Specifically, Timothy would not leave any fingerprints or eyewitnesses or confessions. Furthermore, due to the fact the murders had occurred in different settings that were miles away, departments did not realize until later on they were all hunting for the same killer and rapist. One day, the police would connect the similarities between the murders in Arlington and the murders in Richmond. Patterns began to arouse that helped and led to the arrest of Timothy Wilson Spencer. On January 20, 1988, the police would arrest Timothy Wilson Spencer in his house in Richmond, Virginia. Trial and court proceedings. The trial and court proceedings for the case of Timothy Wilson Spencer highly relied on historic advancement of DNA forensic technology. Furthermore, there were several separate trials held for the case of Timothy Wilson Spencer, due to the fact he would commit murders across different areas. Specifically, Timothy would be forced to attend his first trial in Arlington County. The second trial involved in the setting in the city of Richmond, Virginia. The third trial would once again involve in the same setting as the second trial in the city of Richmond. Lastly, the fourth and final trial would take place in Chesterfield County, Virginia. All trials were held in Virginia. There were many attempts from the prosecution to use DNA technology, however, it failed several times to prove Timothy was responsible. The DNA technology had wrote the DNA was unlikely for Timothy to be the owner due to the fact the DNA had statistically said and proven, not sure, anyways. The probability of the DNA belonged to Timothy Wilson Spencer was 1 in 705 million people. Despite the results of the DNA technology, the judge would still agree with Timothy Wilson Spencer being guilty for the murders, along with other crimes. With a combination of his past crimes and the DNA technology results, it led to the court sentencing Timothy Wilson Spencer to the death penalty, while that evidence was also used to free David Vasquez, whom was proven to not be the serial killer or the rapist responsible for the murders or break-ins. Childhood. The childhood of Timothy Wilson Spencer was not necessarily the worst childhood known to a serial killer to have. However, it was reportedly said that his parents did not have a financially stable condition. Though a lot of the times, Timothy Wilson Spencer was known to cause many trouble in the neighborhood him and his family lived in. Timothy had a younger brother named Travis Wilson Spencer. They seemed to have got along at first. However, later on, Timothy would use his brother as a subject with assaults and chokeholds. It was unknown whether Timothy was bullied himself. However, many sources would show the opposite, and in fact, Timothy was reportedly to be the bully himself in his neighborhood. In one of the occasions, it was noted Timothy Wilson Spencer would beat a neighborhood friend with a huge rock. Timothy was known to be in a group of troublemakers where they would engage in theft, steal from stores, sometimes would even go so far and rob areas. Due to the crimes he would commit as a child, he would be sent to juvenile delinquency and misogyny. During school times, he was an outcast, not a popular kid. He was considered to be a severe troublemaker. He would also reportedly release urine in school grounds, along with committing with arson-like activities. Overall, the childhood of Timothy Wilson Spencer was really a beginning for a large crime spree. Life with his brother, Timothy Wilson Spencer edition. Reportedly, before having a negative relationship with his brother, Travis Wilson Spencer, as said before, both Timothy Wilson Spencer and Travis Wilson Spencer had ironically had a positive and good brotherhood-like relationship. In one of the occasions from one of the interviews with his brother Travis, there was a time when they were a child where both Timothy and Travis would ride their bikes as they talked. Timothy, in fact, would train his brother Travis to ride the bike. However, they would crash into a car. Despite Timothy warning his brother to be careful, they would seem to dap each other up and move on as they continued to have a fun day. Ironically, one day, instead of Timothy being arrested for his crimes, Travis was detained by the police due to him being caught stealing candy from a store. The mother of both Timothy and Travis would arrive to the police station, along with Timothy, to release Travis out of the police station. Ironically and surprisingly, instead of Timothy encouraging his brothers to steal, he would say to not steal and to not follow his criminal footsteps Timothy had done. In other words, Timothy did not want his brother to turn out the same way he did. Personal life, potentially affecting their crimes and acts. Timothy Wilson Spencer did not have an ordinary, traditional, romantic personal life. He would instead spend a lot of his time in and out of prisons for his criminal tradition. In addition, the criminal habits did not go away even when he was an adult. He would continue to tragically honor his criminal habit and rob areas. It was noted he disliked females so much around him. One time he would punch a female in the streets. That was said in one of the sources. However, it's not proven or contain any evidence that supports that the incident actually occurred. Anyways, however, he was overall spending a lot of his time in and out of prisons for his personal life experience. Pivotal events. Timothy Wilson Spencer was born on the 17th of March, 1962 in Green Valley, Arlington, Virginia. On 1962, soon after Timothy was born, his parents would divorce. During the early 1970s, as a young teenager, Timothy would be sent in and out from juvenile detention centers. During the mid-1970s, Timothy would commit arson and would even victimize his mother in his crimes, which involved setting his mother's car on fire. On January of 1984, Timothy would commit his first murder. On July of 1988, the DNA forensic technology would help the court convict Timothy for his crimes. On April 27, 1994, Timothy Wilson Spencer would eat his last meal, specifically fried chicken with soda. Quotes from Timothy Wilson Spencer. Travis, don't ever steal. Don't be like me. Be better than me. Forensic inferences. Timothy Wilson Spencer's murders is really in a way a cause from an internal conflict rather than a super negative childhood. There were definitely difficult red flags to control and help with during his childhood years. It's likely Timothy as a child was already a narcissist who thought everyone around him will think he is attractive. However, seemingly from the lack of attention, instead of changing himself, he would go with the road of crimes. He himself, even if there was a small part in him that wanted to resist, Timothy was likely already consumed and adjusted into the life of crimes, meaning it was likely very difficult for Timothy himself to stop himself from committing the crimes he also wanted to commit at the same time. While not proven, there is a high chance from the lack of attention from females giving him during his childhood that may have been a fuel on starting and arousing a hatred and a volatile demeanor towards females. In a way, he was lost in his own mind, whether if it was a fantasy or not. It's likely there was something in him, somewhere within him. He knew it was wrong, and he knew he should not do the crimes. As said before, he warned his brother to not get into the crimes like how he is in. In a way, Timothy also lacked the proper father figure, likely causing him to consider himself as a dominant parent briefly. In addition, the lack of father meant there wasn't really anyone to guide him throughout his life, or childhood years at least. Overall, the life of Timothy Wilson Spencer is a case where his criminal mindset and arousal took over him. Legacy and impact. The case of Timothy Wilson Spencer is one of the first cases that DNA technology had helped with convicting a serial killer to going into the death penalty. Timothy's case led to the birth of DNA databanks in Virginia state at least. The Virginia's new DNA system had expanded in other states aside from Virginia. The female community in Virginia carries fear within him from the case of Timothy. Travis Wilson Spencer, the brother of Timothy Wilson Spencer, had created a book and perspective as a survivor. Till this day, Travis Wilson Spencer, the brother of Timothy Wilson Spencer, carries a deep guilt on the crimes Timothy Wilson Spencer had committed.